Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. We're in Williamsburg, Brooklyn on the set of Breaking Bread, and you can actually hear Monsignor in the other room making noise, so we're sorry about that. But we are excited to be in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, sitting down with Troy Miller, the president and CEO of NRB and NRB TV. Thank you so much for coming to Brooklyn. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's interesting because I've been attending NRB for almost 10 years now, covering a lot of the interviews, and you and I, we spent some time last year together. So for you to come to Brooklyn, to Williamsburg, I'm honored. And to be a guest also on Breaking Bread, it means a lot. But in case there are a few people out there that aren't familiar with NRB or NRB TV, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Association, has been around. We just celebrated 80 years. Started back in 1944 when radio was a medium, and some pastors got together and said, hey, we want to use this to proclaim the gospel. And guess what? There was a group that wanted to even control who was on radio back then. So they got together at Moody Church in Chicago, and they formed the National Religious Broadcasters Association to advocate on behalf of Christians who want to be in the public space, who want to be in the marketplace or in the broadcast space out there. And we've been doing that now for 80 years. We work on Capitol Hill, on legislation that's going through, the regulatory environment. We work in the legal environment. And today, of course, we work a lot in the corporate and mainstream media environments because there's a lot of hostility out there.
And now this year, NRB, where is it being held? Tell us about that.
So we do an annual conference. It's the largest gathering of Christian communicators. This year we'll be in Grapevine, Texas, just north of Dallas there. It'll be February 24th through the 27th, and it's at the Gaylord Texan. It's just a great, beautiful place, beautiful facility. We love it there. And like I said, it will be the largest gathering of Christians, communicators, anybody that's in the all kinds of media space, both from North America and internationally. We had, I think, over 23 countries represented last year at the convention.
I mean, honestly, I enjoy it. I look forward to attending. The months always change and the location changes. It's just being together in a group in a setting like that. First of all, where we're glorifying God. I don't meet anyone that has their own agenda. It's all about Jesus Christ. I've been calling Catholic Craig. So when I meet someone, they're like, you're Catholic? And it's like, oh my God. But I enjoy going and meeting people and the relationships and praying for one another. It's just something so special that I attend. But I've been doing Christian media for a long time now, almost 15 years. But for people that don't understand, what is the importance? Like, why is it necessary that we communicate the gospel and use new forms of media?
Oh yeah, it really is necessary. Look, one of the statistics I read recently was that the average American now consumes about 10 hours of media a day. That's like almost our whole day. So they're consuming that much media. Media is today where we get most of our information. It's also been very influential in how we form our opinions and our view of the world. So if Christians aren't in that space, if we're not out there talking, if we're not communicating, if we're not talking about what values we hold and what principles we adhere to and what the gospel really means to people, then where are they going to hear it? And what are they going to hear? And what are they going to be influenced by? So we're called to be salt and light in this world. Well, salt today is in media. That's where we need to be. That's where we need to be communicating.
And the thing about the media, it's not because I've worked in, like I said, Catholic entertainment and running a TV station, but the Catholic Church for us, it was sometimes we're not at the same level all the time as, say, the evangelicals. And when I went to NRB the first time and I saw the level of media and content creation, it's extraordinary. So when you say about communicating on media or the platforms of media, it's not just like media. You're talking about, like this year, even last year, they were talking about like AI and VR and new forms of media. So it's not just communicating through smoke signals or AM radio. You're talking about the latest new forms of media. I mean, so when I go there and I see like what's coming out and what's on the horizon and how we're communicating, I mean, it's extraordinary. It really lights a fire.
It really is. And Christians have been some of the best at grabbing these new innovations, new technologies, and really using them. And not just about, recording your Sunday message or recording that. I was just recently on a trip down in Texas, and they had two large churches that have huge studios, modern technology. So one of them is going to put in this whole new LED screen for their background. So they're kind of going away from the studios. And like you said, using AI, using that. And again, look, that's what we're called to do, is to use the things, the innovation of this world for good, for the proclamation of the good in the gospel and for what's righteous. And it's so neat to see at NRB what some of these ministries are doing and how they're really on that leading edge.
Oh, it's great. It really, when I leave there, like I said, there's this sense of excitement. I'm like, oh. Because even for me to even get into using AI, like right away I'm like, it's cheating. It's not. I shouldn't be doing this. Right? My conscience is going. But then I'm like, wait a second. All it's doing is it's it's enhancing and allowing me to do other things as long as it's used the right way. But that initial thought, I said, this is wrong. This isn't what I should be doing because of my biblical principles. But I'm like, wait, God is giving us this tool in order for me to communicate to all these people faster in a different way, and then using technology and the way they communicate the right way. Otherwise, I feel like we're casting stones and we're not able to actually to reach anyone. But beyond media, what else does NRB stand for?
Well, look, we stand for a number of things out there. And one of the others to do, and you talked about it just a little bit there, is really to help ministries, help organizations how to be more effective in what they do. So while we're working on all the legislative, regulatory stuff, and we're being advocates out there at the same time, we're helping ministries do that iron sharpen irons. We're bringing those new technologies to the forefront. We're talking about those things. And then we're really kind of a big advocate for the Christian community to get engaged, to get involved. You know, our faith was never meant to be in the four walls of a church. So whether we're on the evangelical side or the Catholic side, get involved and moving it forward. And we're just saying, look, that's how our faith should be lived out. Our faith should be in the public square. It should be out there for everybody to see.
And one thing too, I don't know why I've been repeating it. We used to have a radio station on AM 710, but I keep telling Monsignor, everybody about this, the AM. Like, I don't listen to AM as often as I should, but why should we be concerned that the AM radio, the AM stations might be taken off of car radios or just sort of, abolished?
So AM radio, look, I grew up as a Nebraska farm kid. AM radio was key to us. My grandfather listened to it all the time. Turn it on the farm, in the car. Here's the noon ag report. Here's what's going on for the weather. AM radio has a much farther reach than the FM radio do. And a lot of America still counts on AM radio for the whole emergency broadcast system. For me in the Midwest, when these severe thunderstorms come through and tornadoes, and when I lived in Florida, when the hurricanes hit, and those folks down in Louisiana now with the hurricane, AM radio is important to us. Plus, AM radio is critical for Christian programming. It's the number one programming on AM radio is Christian teach and talk, conservative talk, as well as a lot of Spanish radio content is on there. So we see a lot of minorities that are on AM radio. So it's important, and we don't think the car companies should control free access. That's the other thing about AM radio. It's free. You tune it into your car. You can even tune it in over the internet. A lot of them there.
All these statistics I was reading, and actually David A.R. White, who we know, he did a film, God's Not Dead. I just reviewed it. And I'm going to say 25 to 40 million Christians don't vote.
Right.
I mean, when I heard that statistic and I interviewed Scott Baio and we're talking about it, I'm like, and I came up with a slogan, maybe he said in the film, but get off the boat and vote, right? Related to Peter. But why is it? Do Christians even know that their religious freedoms are under attack? But then again, too, I have to challenge the question, too, because I've been working for the church a long time. And we complain about how religious freedoms are being taken away. But then we're not preaching the gospel. We're not using social media. They're selling properties, Christians, Catholics, like crazy, building high-rises. So we're complaining about our religious freedoms being taken away, but we're not even voting. We're not even standing up for what we believe in, and we're not united. I don't blame one person. I think collectively we all need to stand up and vote and fight for what's right. So tell me a little bit about the importance of voting and how did we get here?
I think you're exactly right. We all need to come together and we need to stand up for our rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, all of those things that were granted to us in the First Amendment by our forefathers who understood how important those freedoms were. But we can lose those freedoms in a blink of an eye if we're not involved. So you have to think about it this way. Somebody is going to govern. Somebody is going to set the policies in this country. Somebody is going to be introducing legislation. Somebody is going to be making the decisions on how money is spent. Our tax money is spent. Who do you want to make those decisions? Do you want people to make those decisions that hold to the same values, the same principles, the same opinions, the same worldview that you hold to? Or do you want to give all that over to somebody else who holds the opposite, or maybe even a hostile worldview and hostility towards your own values and your own opinions? And I don't think we as Christians often think of that enough. We don't go back and think about, this is not about a popularity contest. This is not about a chance for me to express my opinion. The vote is about who's going to govern, who is going to rule over, who is going to make those decisions, who's going to spend that money. And as Christians, to me, it just seems really simple. I think you'd want fellow Christians doing that, and making those decisions. So we do need to see more people get involved. And we have too many people today that are too afraid. They're afraid, it's often talked about, what don't you talk about at family gatherings, right? Don't talk about religion and don't talk about politics. I think that's kind of strange. It's the two things we should be talking about with our families, because if we really love them, right?
Yes.
In the church, whether evangelical or Catholic, if we really love them, then we care about where they spend eternity. And if we really love them, then we care about how they're treated by the government that governs over the top of them. And that's the role that Christian broadcasters really play, is getting that message out, getting that truth out to the Christian community, to let them know what are the important issues of today. That's really important for us as Christians, to be communicators of the truth and what's going on and how we can impact the culture.
That's interesting. But for whatever reason, people don't vote, right? I mean, why do you think that is?
Look, I think it goes back to two things. One, I think they're afraid of what their family, what their friends, what other people are going to ask them that question. They think they're afraid that if they say they're going to vote for somebody that holds their values, then they're going to have to back it up. And too many Christians are not prepared how to back up what they believe. The second thing I think it is, they think their votes don't matter.
Yes. That's I live in a blue state, I live in a red state. What's the point?
Yeah, which is not true. We often get confused that that's way up here at the top of that federal voting for the president level. But remember, we're voting all the way down to very, very personal things that happen in our own communities. So they're not paying enough attention. There was a recent Barna survey that came out that said about 37% of Christians don't even know what's really going on in politics or in the culture today. And so your vote really does matter. And as we said, look, 37% of Christians did not get involved in vote. 7 million of those were in swing states. If those folks would have gotten involved, that would have entirely changed the governance of this country. And so when you're upset about what's not going your way, or you're not happy that your principles and your values are being displayed by the governments in there, remember, you have the power to change that. Nobody else does. That's the beauty of our constitutional republic. That's the beauty of the democracy side of it here.
Interesting. And I heard someone say to me, I don't vote because I don't want to serve on jury duty.
Oh.
So even at that level, jury duty, which I don't even know if it's true. I got to ask Alexa. But go back to the point now, what you're saying, even about religious freedom, right? You can't complain about our freedoms being taken away if you'd rather go, I'm Sunday, sports, I can't go to church, I got to watch football. My kids are in whatever, CYL.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. You cannot complain. And I think we should all use media, social media, to proclaim the gospel, or at least talk about it. I'm taking a picture of my sandwich, right? But I won't post about Jesus Christ. Why? Because I'm going to be ostracized, or my family's going to think of me differently. But I'll post when society says I can. For us, it's Ash Wednesday. Everyone's Catholic, or it's a holiday, Merry Christmas, because society gives me the permission to do it. Every day we should, or at least once a week, we should be saying something positive or talk about Jesus Christ. Otherwise, I don't think we should complain about my freedoms being taken away and being censored when you won't even talk about Jesus, right?
Right. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about what our pastor said in a sermon or what our priest gave to us at Mass. We shouldn't be afraid to do that. We shouldn't be afraid to say, hey, Mass was great today, and my service was great today. We should be communicating each week. We shouldn't be afraid to say what God's talked to us about in our life. The world does. The world tells us all about what's going on in theirs. And we do too often, that's part of our human nature. We do sort of lean to that. We want to be accepted. We want to feel positive about ourselves. We want to have that. But look, Christianity was never meant to be comfortable, right? Jesus said himself, if the world hates you, remember, it hated me first. Right. Okay. And so as Christians, you hit another point. We live in a great time today. This is a time where everybody individually has the chance to be a communicator, whether it's in your own social networks. I mean, how often for years you lost connections with high school friends and with buddies for growing up, or in my case, from the service. And now because we have social media, we have connections and influence on all of those folks. So why aren't we talking about that? Why isn't our faith more important to us? We really do have to step up. And look, Christian communicators and folks like you, Christian broadcasters, folks that are producing programming, they are the folks today that are being bold to tell the truth and not be afraid to tell the truth. And then we keep encouraging more people to get involved, and for broadcasters not to just be friendly, but also to tell the truth. Because look, we know mainstream media is not going to do it today. So someplace they have to hear the truth, and someplace they have to hear hope.
I love it. We're called to carry the cross. We're not called to carry the cross and then it gets heavy, I put it down. Keep your eyes on the cross and move forward. I call myself a communicator for Christ, right? And I think for people that sort of get into this, if the intentions aren't pure, you're so concerned about the numbers. You know, you're not receiving any money through YouTube, or only 3 people are watching. You lost it already, because it's not about that. And the comments that I got a comment yesterday, I told my wife, and she's like, people have nothing to do but just comment negatively. And I said, yeah, but it's funny. Like, I don't even let that bother me, but you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready that when I put stuff on LinkedIn, I know when I'm looking for a job, they're like, oh, this guy's not going to work. You have to be prepared for that it's not going to always be easy and open arms. And I know that people look at me differently and say, there's something odd about this guy, but I'm not concerned about that. That's not why I do it. But you as a Christian communicator have to know that when you start proclaiming that gospel, you have to live that life. It can't be just something you put on social media. Right. So all of the things that we do, I tell my son, and I go by this, I stole from a pastor, always return your shopping cart, right? Which is the easiest thing because nobody's watching.
That's right.
Because if you're going to carry yourself and talk about Jesus and how I proclaim the gospel, but then my life is different from that, then that's a problem. So all of that has to really, it has to be true. It has to really be who you are. If we don't vote, if we don't unite, where do you see us in the next 5-10 years?
Well, look, the founding fathers made a really interesting observation when they put the Constitution together, when they looked at this country and even declared their independence. One of the things they understood that it ultimately comes down to people, right? It ultimately comes down to how we self-govern and what we expect the government to do.
Troy, listen, always a pleasure, and I will be at NRB this year. And like I said, I'd love to be that conduit, that bridge that brings the Catholics there, because next time there'll be more than 3 of us waving our hands, because what you offer is something that has impacted my life and my walk, and I know that it can impact other Catholics and other Christians, because NRB to me is the standard. And when I leave that event, I'm like, there's so much more and so many people that I meet that I continue to build relationships with. So I will see you in Texas, and thank you for coming to Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Well, thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember, you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you. We'll see you at NRB.